Ever thought about how sea pirates helped make European colonies? Our tale begins in the 15th century when the Age of Discovery started. Back then, big European countries like Spain and Portugal were exploring unknown places. They were drawn by the promise of wealth in the East Indies. But it wasn't just storms and rough seas that made these trips dangerous. There was a new danger: sea pirates. These pirates, sometimes called privateers when a country supported them, weren't just lawbreakers. They were involved in the big process of making colonies. They disrupted trade routes, took valuable goods, and affected the power balance. Their existence was a constant reminder of the risks and rewards of exploring new places. As they made the waters dangerous, pirates also indirectly helped in the making of fortified outposts and colonies. First, these were just places for European navy and merchant ships to refuel and resupply. But with the constant risk of pirate attacks, these outposts became really important. Places like the Caribbean islands, the coasts of Africa, and the ports of the Indian Ocean turned areas of European control. Over time, these outposts became large colonies, further cementing European control in these areas. But they weren't just created for trade. They became really important in the fight against pirates, changing who controlled wealth and power. So, when we think about piracy, we shouldn't just see them as bad guys or romantic outlaws on the sea. We should see it as something that really shaped how the world looks. It was a driving force that helped create colonies, changing the world map. In the big game of making colonies, the pirates were like the rooks in chess. They might not have been the strongest pieces, but they had an important part to play. Piracy wasn't just bad, it really shaped how the world looks. The frequent attacks by pirates necessitated the establishment of fortified outposts and colonies. In the face of this maritime menace, the European powers had to adapt. These adaptations took the form of strategically placed outposts and colonies in regions that were particularly vulnerable to pirate attacks. Let's take a journey to the Caribbean islands, the African coast, and the Indian Ocean. These locations, with their unique blend of geographical advantages, became the chosen spots for these European footholds. The Caribbean islands were a veritable treasure trove, teeming with valuable resources. The African coast offered a gateway to the riches of the African continent. The Indian Ocean, with its direct route to the East Indies, was a highly coveted maritime highway. Yet these outposts were not mere settlements. They were fortified strongholds, designed to withstand the onslaught of pirate attacks. They were equipped with everything from watchtowers for early detection of incoming pirate ships, to cannons for defense, and secure harbors for their own fleets. Over time, these initial fortifications evolved, growing in size and complexity. What began as defensive outposts soon morphed into bustling colonies. They attracted settlers from the European mainland, and with them came the seeds of European culture, language, and governance. These colonies became centers of trade, with goods from the East Indies and the Americas flowing through their ports. But their role was not limited to commerce. They also served as a base for the European powers to launch their own naval expeditions, further expanding their reach and influence across the globe. As these colonies thrived, the European presence in these regions was further solidified. But it wasn't merely for the purpose of trade. It was a strategic necessity to protect their maritime interests from the pirate threat. These outposts were not just trade centers but strategic necessities to protect maritime interests from the pirate threat. In this way, the pirates, once viewed as the scourge of the high seas, inadvertently contributed to the establishment of the very entities that would eventually lead to their decline, the European colonial empires. The establishment of these colonies had a profound impact on global trade. As European powers staked their claim on foreign lands, they were able to tap directly into the wealth of the East Indies and the Americas. Bypassing the traditional trade routes dominated by the Ottomans and the Venetians, they brought back a rich haul of spices, gold, and other exotic goods, changing the course of world trade forever. But the economic gains were not without their share of strife. These new routes and colonies sparked off intense rivalries among European powers. What had started as a simple endeavor to protect trade from pirates soon became a battle for dominance. The high seas turned into a chessboard, with countries like England, Spain, Portugal, and later the Dutch and the French, all vying for control over these lucrative trade routes and colonies. The colonies themselves became the epicenter of these conflicts, as each power sought to strengthen its foothold, sometimes through alliances and treaties, and at other times through outright warfare. The stakes were high, and the rewards even higher. However, these conflicts and the ensuing race for colonies led to a significant shift in the world order. No longer was global trade concentrated around the Mediterranean or the Silk Road. The epicenter had moved to the Atlantic and the Pacific, reshaping the world's economic and political landscape. The intertwining fates of piracy, colonialism, and global commerce became more evident. As European navies grew stronger and international treaties were signed, the Golden Age of Piracy began to wane. The high seas, once teeming with pirate ships and privateers, gradually became safer for merchant vessels. It was a slow but inevitable decline, marked by the increasing might of European naval forces and the codification of maritime laws. Yet, piracy's decline did not mean the end of colonial expansion. On the contrary, the very colonies that had been established as bulwarks against piracy now became the stepping stones for the rise of European colonial empires. The fortified outposts, once mere refueling and resupply stations, evolved into bustling centers of trade and administration. These colonies, scattered across the Caribbean, Africa, and the Indian Ocean, reshaped the global map and redefined power structures. They became the launch pads for further exploration, the hubs of cultural exchange, and the crucibles of conflict between emerging and established powers. The legacy of this era, however, is a complexly merged with threads of exploration, colonization, and conflict. It gave rise to the European colonial empires that dominated the world for centuries, but it also set the stage for countless struggles for independence, cultural clashes, and economic disparities that still resonate today. The tide of empires was shaped not just by the winds of exploration, but also by the waves of piracy. In the grand narrative of history, the echoes of this era continue to reverberate, reminding us of the intertwined destinies of piracy, colonialism, and global commerce. Thank you for joining us. If you enjoyed this voyage through history, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more tales of adventure and intrigue. Until next time, keep exploring.